Well, good evening. I'm going to go ahead and get started because it's just about time anyway. Hello, my name is Philip Blue Owl Hooser. I will be your speaker this evening. There's more about me in the program, I think. But I am an actor, playwright, director. I host a radio show on KKFI. And I've been doing this in the park for 22 years now, which is a great joy and pleasure for me, I must say. I also want to say, just because it's joyous, and I think that it's something we should all aim for, I have completed 2 bucket list items in the past month. There's a podcast called Risk! Which is a storytelling podcast, much like This American Life, if you're familiar with that. Only it's stories you never thought you'd dare to share. And there were approximately 20 people, apparently, who applied to perform at a live show they did in Lawrence, May 19th. And I was one of the 4 people selected for that, so I'm feeling pretty happy. Plus, I've listened to the show for like 6 years, and being able to be part of it was just a pleasure. Also, my other item was that for the past 2 weekends, I have been performing a role I've wanted to play for 30 years, and that is the role of Arnold in Torch Song Trilogy, which Harvey Fierstein wrote for himself and ended up winning a Tony Award for Best Actor and for Best Play, and it was 3.5 hours long, and we performed it over 8 days, so I've devoted an entire 24 hours of my life to performing that role, and I tell you, I couldn't be happier. It was such a great experience. So now I'm fulfilling another one being here for you, to tell you some things about this play. There's a lot actually about Much Ado About Nothing that we can learn from the title alone, once you know a couple of things about how to unlock it. For instance, one of the easy ones, it's a comedy. It doesn't have tragedy or history in the title, right? And the title fits in with things like As You Like It and Measure for Measure and All Is Well That Ends Well, and the alternate title for Twelfth Night, What You Will. It has multiple storylines, as do Shakespearean comedies, some very fun and funny dialogue. There's a romantic storyline with an impediment to true happiness, and there's a happy ending. I say happy ending. They get married. Who knows what happens after that? But looking at just the words in the title of this play, we can also discern some things. There's certainly a lot going on, but is it really about nothing? And if it's not about nothing, then what is it about exactly? The play certainly has plenty of ado that's going on, and there is plenty of nothing, and nothing's plenty for me and porgy. See, I also know a lot of theater history, so occasionally that slips in. There are a lot of misunderstandings among the characters, certainly, but on another level, Elizabethans pronounced the word nothing as noting, and that certainly works on various levels, one of them being music, because the characters talk about music and dance a lot in this play. It becomes sort of a symbol of the courtship dance between the main romantic couples. And the plot of this play has also been compared to a folk dance, where men and women will start off dancing together, and then the women will dance together, and the men will dance together, and then they come back together at the end. And that's certainly a reflection of how the play goes. It's also noting in the sense of noticing. And specifically in this play, that takes the form of eavesdropping and spying on people. But note this well, there may be many a truth dropped in eaves, but it's not all accurate. In fact, in this play, the big examples of noting and noticing, there are 4 of them. Only one of them is an accurate assessment of what's going on. In the first 2, the characters of Beatrice and Benedict have been told to go to some place where they can hear some people who are setting them up. They are saying that each one loves the other one. You know, Beatrice overhears that Benedict loves her. Benedict hears the same thing about himself, about Beatrice. And it's not exactly true when they hear it, but eventually it becomes true. And the other 2 we'll get to in due course in discussing the play. But noting also works as an Elizabethan slang word in this play. And it's rather delicate to talk about on a summer's evening in the park. I'll describe it this way. Noting, spelled nothing, is an Elizabethan slang word for something that is called something when it's visible on a man, but it's nothing or noting when it's on a woman because it is not visible. Adam's apple, right? Not really. So in many senses, and one big pun, there is much ado about noting going on in this play, which indicates something else we can learn about the play, and that's language is very important, and language is a lot of fun in this. The characters in this play are in love with words in a way that there almost aren't in any other Shakespeare play, sometimes even excessively, because they express things in only the most and utmost terms. For instance, Beatrice and Benedict both declare that they will never marry. And Claudio says that the girl Hero is the sweetest girl that he has seen. And the policeman Dogberry only catches criminals by accident in this play. But he never catches the right words to say, as you will see when you see him. The action of this play takes place in a Sicilian village called Messina, a village of which Leonato is the governor, and he has a daughter of marriageable age named Hero. And for a few days, the Prince Don Pedro and his soldiers are on leave, after having defeated Don Pedro's half-brother, Don John, that they've also brought along for the ride, because what else are you going to do? You know, you've been defeated, that's okay, come along, we'll have fun in Messina. And after a battle, what are soldiers wont to do? Well, apparently fall in love. And it doesn't seem to require chocolates and nylons, unlike other soldiers from World War II I mentioned, because I'm old. Claudio, while he was waging war, became convinced that he is in love with Hero. Claudio is our hero. Hero is our heroine. I hope all that makes sense. And Hero is actually named for a figure from Greek mythology who was a priestess who lived on one side of a river, and she was the beloved of Leander. And Leander lived on the other side of the river. And each night he would swim across the dangerous river so that he could be with her. And then he would swim back in the morning. Unfortunately, during one night he was doing this, he drowned in the myth. So, if you're in touch with that story, you'll know that Hero is kind of set up to be a little bit of a tragic figure. Some tragedy is going to befall her. But poor Claudio, he doesn't swim the river. I don't know that he necessarily could. He's a few cannoli short of a festival, our Claudio. You'll see that he's easily duped. He quickly rushes to judgment about things, sometimes with really horrific consequences. Hero, the daughter of the governor, is a constant topic of conversation in this play. It appears to be that they talk about her the most of really any of the other characters, but she actually speaks the least of our four main romantic characters. She is the good girl who acquiesces. And in fact, actually in the first 130 lines of this play, in the first scene, Hero has one line out of all of that. And it's also interesting to watch for when Hero and Claudio actually speak dialogue to each other on stage for the first time. It may come later than you think that it should. He doesn't even actually propose to her when he proposes marriage. I'll get to that in a moment. But a heroine named Hero is the least of our problems in this play. As a writer, I know a lot about breaking down stories. And so when I look at a story, I look at what's the A story, which is the main story, the main emotional catch in our play, and what is the B story, which is a parallel or lesser story that's going on. You can usually tell which one is the B story because it gets wrapped up before the A story does. In this case, the B story is much more interesting than the A story because of the characters. Claudio and Hero are our A story, our main story, and this is still used in sitcoms today. Sitcom writers talk about the A story and the B story. It is literally a B story in this case because it revolves around Benedict and Beatrice, and they're clever. They are agile with words. They are smart. They are a bantering couple who refuse to be a couple. They have a certain past, we learn, but rather it becomes a rather uncertain past because we don't know exactly what it was. But they were together at one point and now they're broken apart and they hate each other. So what do we know about what's going to happen to them by the end of this play, right? Because they are a couple refusing to be a couple. In fact, when they are first together, one of the bits of dialogue is Benedict saying to Beatrice, "It is certain that I am loved of all ladies, only you excepted. And I would I could find it in my heart that I had not a hard heart, for truly I love none." To which Beatrice replies in my favorite line in the play, "I'd rather hear a dog bark at a crow than a man swear he loves me." So yes, Catherine Tracy and Spencer Hepburn are well represented on the romantic side of this comedy. Now, if Hero is the quiet, modest girl who conforms to society's expectations of her, her cousin Beatrice is the opposite. She seems to have carved out a reputation for herself for being strong and strong-willed and independent and self-sufficient. And Benedict is much the same as her. They both, when they are on stage, they both suck the oxygen out of the room because they are so much in our attention. In fact, they use so much air, I call them the Airbnb. That's timed in there so that I can take a little drink. Thank you. I prefer groaning, but I'll also take laughter. But they're so much more interesting than Claudio and Hero. The Hero sometimes seems like a sidekick to Beatrice in the course of the play, despite the fact that the story couldn't exist without her. In fact, Beatrice and Benedict are so popular and became so popular that throughout the 18th century, playwrights and theatrical producers would just take them out of Much Ado and stick them into some other play that they wanted to have be more fun. You know, Hamlet, he's a little depressing. Let's pump it up with some Beatrice and Benedict action. And they did. They would just insert them into other plays because they're so much fun. So I said that Claudio proposes to Hero, kind of. They don't actually talk. He presses his commander Don Pedro into proposing for him in disguise. And that is actually where our impediment character, the one who stands in the way of the course of true love, and that is Don John, the defeated half-brother of Don Pedro. He is a self-proclaimed villain, and if he can't actually attack Don Pedro directly, he'll go about destroying Claudio's happiness in any way that he possibly can. And for the longest time in this play, we don't know why Don John is so evil. The Elizabethans would have understood him differently than we do. Because it turns out that Don John, is a bastard in every sense possible of the word, pretty much. He was born on the wrong side of the blanket, which is why he's Don Pedro's half-brother. And Elizabethans thought that the very fact of this conception made a person evil. You know, not something we're in touch with today as a belief, but Elizabethans would have recognized it, so now you're one step up on everybody else. The third example of noting in the sense of noticing, spying, or eavesdropping comes when Don John sets up Claudio to see a woman who looks like his betrothed Hero talking to another man. And the implication is there's more than just talk going on between the two of them. And this sends Claudio into a rage on the night before their wedding. And so what should have been Hero's happiest day is ruined when Claudio denounces her, saying of her, "Give not this rotten orange to a friend. She's but the sign and semblance of her honor. Oh, what authority and show of truth can cunning sin cover itself with?" And Benedict, hearing this, turns against his brother in arms, his comrade Claudio, and threatens to kill him in a duel. And Beatrice says that she will eat Claudio's heart in the marketplace. Laugh-a-minute comedy, ain't it? Claudio then gets pressed into marrying Leonato's niece that he says he's got. Sight unseen, in fact completely sight unseen throughout the wedding, because this supposed niece is wearing a veil that he cannot see who it is, and it's revealed to be Hero, even though she has faked her own death. because this is kind of also like Shakespeare's greatest hits. It's a lot of things that we've seen in other Shakespeare plays put into a medley. There's the shrewish independent woman, like the Taming of the Shrew, in Beatrice. The evil bastard brother we see in King Lear. Jealousy and denunciation over perceived unfaithfulness, which is absolutely wrong. Conclusion that Claudio goes to, say, the drop of a handkerchief, just as Othello does. And it leads to our heroine, Claudia, our hero, faking her death with the help of a monk. Where have I Romeo and Julieted that before, right? In the fourth example of noting or noticing eavesdropping, spying in this play, it restores heroes' honor because Dogberry, our incompetent policeman, happens to overhear one of Don John's henchmen talking about how he has tricked Claudio into this situation. Look, comedy is frequently about a situation that's threatening to come apart at the seams. Throughout this play, impediments arise and they're just quickly dispatched, sometimes a little too quickly for belief or our comfort. But it's something that we accept in comedy. We accept that things are going to be taken care of very quickly. And we certainly will always seem to forgive it in a Shakespeare comedy because it's got that name on it, right? But still, there are things in this play that are a little troubling. Soldiers, of course, will do what they are told. Fight the war against my half-brother, marry the niece sight unseen. The women also do as they are told, marry the soldier, marry at all costs seems to be the guideline for them. The women's societal roles in this play are either being the innocent or the spoiled fruit. The rotten orange that Claudio says, except for Beatrice. Beatrice is most like the men, most like the soldiers in this play. And yet, in the end, she goes along. She is agreeing to conform and marry Benedict, creating peace with him, as he says that he will stop her mouth. He does mean with a kiss, but there's more implications than that. Hero and Claudio are the romantic ideal of passionate love in this play. Their love is pretty bland. They're just in love with love more than each other, it seems. Beatrice and Benedict only have passion in their fighting. Benedict gives, in fact, at the end, gives marriage the ringing endorsement, well, the world must be peopled. Oh boy! So much of the plot revolves around Hero, but the story is really about men and their public relationships with each other, their reputations. Fight the war, marry the virgin, protect other men at all costs, and believe other men over women. They believe Don John even though he's a bastard in every sense, and they believe him over women. Claudio has done in war, and is described in the figure of a lamb, the feats of a lion. But he's incompetent in talking with girls. His identity, and Benedict's as well, is in being a man's man. And if you think that we've advanced as a culture beyond this sort of idea and identity, then what does this phrase mean to you? Bros before hoes. It's still out there. People still believe it. Shakespeare comedies, I believe, are largely about conforming to societal expectation. Maybe I read that into it because conformity is not really my strong suit, I must say. But Hero has conformed, and it hasn't protected her at all in the course of this. Beatrice hasn't at all, but she appears to at the end. So perhaps there's actually another layer to this title. That there is much ado about nothing, not necessarily. Perhaps it's ironic to say that love is not nothing at all, but that it shouldn't be treated as casually as the characters in the play treat it. So I think you have a choice. You can be troubled by the gender politics and the societal expectations in the play, or you can find a little peace with it in the B story, because it's so much fun and so playful. And regard the A story as basically a fairy tale, which it's in the tradition of the original versions of fairy tales. For instance, in the original version of Snow White, she's not awakened with a kiss. She has sort of a Me Too moment where she's been under the effects of rohypnol, if you will. Um, so if the A story bothers you, pay attention to the B story and fall under the magic spell, if you will, the voodoo that much ado do so well. And I thank you for being here in the park this evening and for coming down to hear my little chat. Oh, thank you all, thank you all. I always reserve a few minutes at the end in case you have any questions about the play or about the festival or about the wonderful temperature that we seem to suddenly have with the breeze. Because, of course, I look up the weather before I come here. Yes, ma'am. About the sequence and order of Much Ado and how it falls in, and some of the others that share the common themes. All of our thoughts about sequence and the writing of these plays is sort of guesswork. It seems to be sort of a late, early part of Shakespeare's writing, but it could have been written years before. We simply don't know, but there are those themes that I mentioned are things that crop up quite commonly in Shakespeare's plays. You know, that's why it is the medley of greatest hits to me, because they will sometimes be in the extreme, taking center place in a tragedy, or just set apart a little bit in a comedy like this one, and like The Merry Wives of Windsor also features a strong jealousy plot, but not as, it doesn't go to the extremes as this one does. Anyone else? Thoughts, comments? All right, thank you very much. I think you've picked a wonderful evening to be here in the park, and thank you again so much. I hope you enjoy the show.